The daughter of Hollywood's most famous couple, Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie, has once again become the center of attention. This time, it is not because of her parents' fame or a public appearance, but because of a very personal decision she has taken. At just a young age, Shiloh has surprised the world by filing to officially change her name. For many people, this came as an unexpected step, but for those who have followed her journey closely, it feels like a natural choice that reflects her courage and individuality. The news spread quickly across social media and international media platforms, leaving fans curious about the reason behind such a bold decision. From the very beginning of her life, Shiloh Jolie-Pitt has been in the spotlight. Being the first biological child of Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie, her birth was celebrated all around the world. Magazines covered her every picture, and the media constantly followed her every move. But behind all the flashing cameras, Shiloh was just a child trying to live a normal life. She grew up surrounded by love from her parents and siblings, but the outside world always treated her differently because of her famous last name. Even as a little girl, people would discuss her clothes, her hairstyle, and her personality. Unlike most children who could simply be themselves without judgment, Shiloh's choices were often turned into headlines. This constant attention made her early years very different from others her age. While many admired her confidence and unique style, the reality was that living under such heavy public observation was not always easy for her. As Shiloh grew older, she began to understand more about the world around her and the heavy attention that came with being the daughter of Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie. While many children her age were busy exploring their hobbies freely, Shiloh often found herself trapped between public expectations and her own personality. People constantly compared her to her parents, expecting her to follow in their footsteps or fit into a certain image. At times, she felt like she was living in the shadow of two global superstars, and her own voice was being ignored. This struggle created an inner conflict where she questioned who she truly was outside of her famous family. The pressure of always being labeled as Brad and Angelina's daughter made her feel that her individuality was being lost. She wanted the world to recognize her not just because of her last name, but because of who she was as a person. This silent battle of identity grew stronger with time, and deep down, Shiloh knew that one day she would have to take a step to claim her own path. After years of carrying the weight of expectations and constant comparisons, Shiloh finally reached a point where she wanted to take control of her own identity. This wasn't a sudden or impulsive decision. It was something she had been thinking about for a long time. Growing up under the spotlight taught her that the only way to truly feel free was to separate her personal identity from the shadow of her parents' fame. Filing for a legal name change was her way of expressing independence and showing the world that she was ready to define herself on her own terms. For Shiloh, this was not just about changing letters on a document, but about giving herself the power to create her own story. It was a bold and emotional step that required courage, because she knew that once the news became public, people would talk, judge, and analyze her choice. But for Shiloh, the decision was worth it. This was her chance to finally live as the person she truly wanted to be, without feeling tied down by the expectations of the world. When Shiloh finally decided to file for a name change, it was not just a random choice. She carefully thought about what this new name would mean to her and how it would represent the person she wanted to become. Reports suggested that the name she chose carried deep personal significance, something that connected with her inner journey of finding freedom and individuality. For Shiloh, the new name symbolized strength, independence, and a fresh beginning away from the constant comparisons to her parents. It wasn't about rejecting her family. It was about creating her own separate identity that reflected who she truly was inside. To her, this change was like turning a new page in her life, where she could finally breathe freely and be recognized for her own personality, passions, and choices. The meaning behind the name gave her confidence and a sense of peace, reminding her that this was the right step toward shaping her future. When the news of Shiloh's decision reached her family, it stirred many emotions. Angelina Jolie, who has always been very close to her children, was said to be deeply moved by Shiloh's choice. As a mother, her daughter to feel free in expressing her true self. Instead of questioning her decision, Angelina reportedly supported her wholeheartedly, reminding Shiloh that she would always stand by her, no matter what name she carried. On the other hand, Brad Pitt's reaction was slightly more emotional. While he respected Shiloh's independence, he also felt the weight of change as a father. For him, hearing that his daughter wanted to legally separate her identity from the family name was bittersweet. He was proud of her courage, but also nostalgic about the years when she was simply known as Shiloh Pitt. Despite their different emotional responses, both parents made it clear that their love for Shiloh would never change. Even her siblings, who have always been protective of one another, encouraged her and admired her bravery. For the family, this was not a moment of division, but a moment of unity, because above all, they valued Shiloh's happiness and her right to make her own choices. As soon as the news of Shiloh's name change surfaced, it spread rapidly across the internet and media outlets around the world. Fans, journalists, and bloggers all rushed to share their opinions. Many people expressed their surprise, but at the same time, a large number admired her courage to take such a bold step at such a young age. Social media platforms were filled with supportive messages, where fans praised her for following her heart and choosing her own path. However, as expected, there were also debates in the media. Some questioned whether the decision was influenced by her environment, while others argued that it was a natural step for someone growing up under such intense public attention. Despite the mixed discussions, the overall response leaned toward positivity. People recognized that Shiloh was simply trying to live her life authentically, and that resonated with many who had faced similar struggles in defining their identity. In the end, her decision was seen not as a rejection of her family, but as an act of self-discovery, and this gave her even more respect in the eyes of the public. Shiloh's decision to change her name is not just a celebrity headline, it carries a message that touches the hearts of many. Her story reminds us that every individual, no matter how privileged or famous they might be, has their own struggles with identity. People often assume that the children of stars live perfect lives, but the reality is very different. Fame can sometimes feel like a golden cage, where the world admires you but rarely allows you to be yourself. For Shiloh, this decision was her way of breaking free from that cage and taking control of her own life. Her step teaches us that identity is deeply personal. A name may seem like just words written on paper, but for someone who has lived under constant attention, it can carry the weight of the world's expectations. By changing her name, Shiloh proved that she is not afraid to stand up for her truth, even when millions of people are watching. This is not about turning away from her family, nor is it about rejecting the legacy of her parents. Instead, it is about building her own space where she can grow, make mistakes, and shine for who she really is. The courage she showed speaks to every person who has ever felt unseen, unheard, or trapped in an image that didn't match who they are inside. For young people struggling with identity, Shiloh's choice becomes a source of inspiration, showing them that it's okay to step away from labels and expectations. Her journey tells us that happiness does not come from living the way others expect us to. It comes from being true to ourselves, no matter how difficult the road may be. In the end, this was not simply about a new name on a legal document. It was about taking back her voice, her freedom, and her right to live authentically. Shiloh's story will be remembered not just as the choice of a famous daughter, but as the powerful reminder that we all have the right to define who we are. And sometimes, the smallest step, like changing a name, can become the most powerful symbol of independence and self-love. Shiloh's decision to change her name carries a powerful message that goes beyond celebrity headlines. It is a reminder that no matter who your parents are or how famous your family might be, every individual has the right to define themselves in their own way. For Shiloh, this step was not about turning away from her family, but about claiming her own voice and identity. Her courage shows that true happiness comes from being authentic and living in alignment with who you really are. Many young people around the world, especially those who struggle with the weight of expectations, found inspiration in her choice. Her story proves that even when the whole world is watching, it is possible to stand up for yourself and make decisions that bring inner peace. In the end, this was not just about a legal document or a new name.